Hello, good morning, good evening, good day, good afternoon, and aloha. Welcome back to our main Thursday show. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome back to the Unidentified Celebrity Review, your home for credible news, reviews, and commentary on everything UAP and UFO. My name's Luis Jimenez. Before we bring in our co-host, just want to pay some bills here real quick. First of all, I want to say hello to everyone in the chat. Grant LaVox, Sparky Lady, member, Jay Allen Heineken, Pat Calabria, Ryan Sprague. Thank you for the $5 super chat. It says flares. And by the way, we've got a poll going on in the chat. So if you guys want to vote on the poll, give it a little click. All right, let's get to it. I want to say thank you also to DOS Tapes. They provide all the tunes on the show. Their Bandcamp link is in the description below. I want to remind you guys that we are here every Thursday, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, right here on KGRA-DB Live. So if you're on the road, please check us out there and tell KGRA-DB how much you love us. Could go, who knows what might happen. Also want to remind you guys that this show will be available on iTunes and Spotify about an hour after the show airs, so that will be up there. Leave us a rate and review, goes a very long way. Of course, want to say thank you to the Patreon members, the YouTube members, the super chatters, and the moderators. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for supporting the show with the almighty dollar. It goes a very, very long way. But if you can't support with the almighty dollar, don't sweat it. There are no paywalls here. Everything is free, including the podcast. So all we ask is just subscribe, like, share, ring the bell, tell people about the show, and that is payment enough. Thank you so much. And yeah, also, if you want to start a show of your own like this, where you do it live, check out our affiliate. We're an affiliate now of StreamYard. So there's an affiliate link in the description below. If you have any questions about StreamYard, hit me up. I'm always happy to help. I love this software. So if you're looking to start your own YouTube channel, I highly recommend checking out StreamYard. You get a little discount. We get a kickback as well. So there you go. Want to also remind you, the last thing is links. We've got links not only to all of our guests. We don't have a guest today, but if we have a guest, their links are in the description below, along with our co-hosts, Jane and Rather. Rather just dropped a new video today. I'm going to let him tell us about it real quick before we get started with the show. And yeah, that's it. Speaking of co-hosts, let's bring them on. Ms. Jane Kyle, Mr. Rather Be Squidding. Hey. What's going on, guys?
Man, just trying to keep up. There's so much going on right now.
Man, there really is a lot. This last, I think somewhere on Twitter I read somebody was like complaining about how slow the news was, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Like I can't. I'm not even booking guests because there's no time. I want to get to all the things that are happening, and we only have 2 hours to do it.
That really ebbs and flows, doesn't it?
The Brazilian UFO hearings, which I didn't get to watch, but there was a really great Reddit breakdown that I read, and yeah, I mean, it's a lot. It's exciting though. Does that mean the clock's moving forward?
Well, we got to discuss it first before we officially move the clock. We have to break down the Brazilian UFO case, so maybe we do that next week. There's so much to talk about. Like, we haven't even gotten to the Brazilian congressional hearings. You know, like, we should have talked about that a week ago, but gosh, holy cow, there's just so much going down. But yeah, we could try and cover it next week. But yeah, as I'm thinking, like, those
were 12 hours of hearings, right? Yeah, I have some catch up to do.
Yeah. I think the two big takeaways is obviously Robert Salas's testimony, which I heard went into some pretty unconventional, stranger places. And I thought for when this was first announced, I thought that Lou Elizondo was going to be there. But turns out he just did like a little presentation on a recording and sent that in. So that was kind of a bummer, but you know, either way, I think it's still pretty cool. It's a major country and their government having hearings on this topic. So I can't hate on it. It's a positive move in the direction of disclosure, but we'll get to it. We've got a lot to talk about today, but rather, you dropped a new video today. I wanted you to tell the people what's the video about and where they can find it.
Well, yeah, my previous video I did on dark matter, and so I was doing a lot of research into how scientists are trying to search for dark matter, and I came across this really cool science program, which is the Cosmic Ray Distributed Detection Observatory. I don't know if I got that completely right, but basically what it is it's a program where it's a smartphone app where you put electrical tape on your phone's camera, and then all that can get through to your camera sensor is radiation. And so when radiation is present, it will go through that tape and light up pixels on your camera sensors. And these apps kind of do long exposures and detect when that radiation hits your app. And so you can detect radiation with your phone, which is kind of crazy, awesome. Right? Like I had no idea you could do that, but there's multiple scientific papers describing that and describing the efficiency of it. And so basically you can use these apps, put some tape on your phone and put it in your, next to you while you're sleeping. And if the ships are coming at 2 a.m., you might get some real tangible data that maybe there's some radiation events associated with that. And in addition to that, you can send your radiation events back to the servers, and there's a big database of these radiation spikes and the locations where it happened. And that's the real premise of this scientific program, is trying to collect this network of background radiation. Their goal, the scientist's goal, is to find big radiation spikes from cosmic rays with ultra high energy that might be caused by dark matter particles decaying or other really interesting high energy physics. And so if you use these phones, you might detect something like that. But also there's just that location-based radiation data available that you could use to look up historic UFO events or see if there's any weird radiation trends that could be indicative of something. I have links to those apps and the studies and everything in my YouTube video at Rather Be Squidding. So I advise you all to check it out. There's a quick, 6-minute video that I hope is a little bit shareable, because it'd be great if more people would use these apps and, contribute to this data set.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Can you take regular pictures while you have that tape over the lens?
No, it's I've tried to take some pictures. I mean, what, my camera isn't working, and then that's why.
Electrical tape is over there. Yeah, okay. That's cool, man. That's cool. I think that's I'd be interested if that, once I wonder how, first of all, how long the study will be, but second, like where they end up. I wonder if they end up finding some of those radiation spikes in that Uintah Basin area.
Yeah, it could be very, very interesting. And I'd advise any UFO investigators, it's just another tool in your basket. Advise people to load it up and see.
Also, if you think you see a UFO and you pop on the tape and if you could catch it in time, assuming, let's just say if you're watching it for a while, there are those kinds of sightings, you could use this instrument to record whatever you're seeing and see if there is a radiation spike off of it or emanating from it. I think if it was just a Chinese lantern or a drone, it probably wouldn't emanate those things, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah. I mean, you might pick up some background radiation. That's a little bit of a problem, that there's going to be some noise, but if there is a real thing giving off radiation, you should be able to detect it with these phones. That's kind of what UAPX was doing too. They had the specific device built, the Cosmic Watch, to correlate their sightings with radiation events, and that's how they found their big interesting tear in the sky moment from their expedition. So there is some precedence for this being useful information. Jane, you're muted.
Oh, you're muted. I was wondering why I didn't hear you.
I had the best time with with not a Geiger counter. What is it?
Geiger counter.
Geiger counter? Okay. Yeah. When I went down to South Texas and to the actual UFO site in Edinburgh, Texas from the 60s. And there's, you can go walk around and, trying to see if there were any radiation spikes and anything. Thankfully, we were all safe and we didn't get anything. We don't really want to get anything. It's kind of a weird experience. But apparently they've gotten spikes before on certain materials and stuff that were left over from the construction site, because there was these flames or fire that came down from these alleged craft that destroyed this construction site in Edinburgh, Texas. So that was fun. That was fun to experience actual field work.
Yeah, no, it's like It's a whole invisible world around us that we don't really have any visibility into until unless you use something like a Geiger counter or an app like this.
Well, speaking of Geiger counters and apps like that in the Uintal Basin, that reminded me that Carl Vibe just found what is causing the lights on the Magic Mesa. So I haven't heard the exact explanation. He's still putting stuff together, but it seems like they've figured it out, which is awesome.
Yeah, it sounds like a prosaic explanation, but hasn't spilled the beans yet. I'm very curious what it is.
Yeah, I'm also curious as to what it is. But we'll get into that probably by next week. I have a feeling we'll have an answer on what the Magic Mesa lights are, and we'll probably get them in here and talk to them. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see Carl Vibe's journey right now through this whole process, because I feel like he's really aware and vigilant on stuff that's not true.
Well, I mean, I got to give him, major credit for, being able to come and say that, do investigative work. And if it, doesn't turn out to be paranormal, coming back with that answer. I feel like that's kind of a problem with a lot of people in the community, where they'll kind of dig their heels in their hypotheses. And when the data comes in, they will either reject it if it doesn't confirm their bias, or, try to figure out ways to make it fit whatever they think it is. And it sounds like Carl Vibe is really taking the objective approach and, figuring things out, which is awesome.
Oh no, now you're muted. What's happening? It's
I was just saying he's not messing around. Yeah, I'm super excited to see his journey and sort of where it leads. I have a feeling it's going to ruffle some feathers.
Well, solved cases are the best cases. I mean, they may not be the most fun or stimulating or exciting, but you are always taking a step up the ladder whenever you solve something, whenever you figure something out. I don't call myself a debunker or a skeptic, but technically that's the majority of what I'm doing when I'm getting a report. Is most of the time I'm just checklist. Could it be this? Could it be this? Could it be this? That's what you're trying to do. And then you're left over with the leftovers.
Yeah. Well, let's get into today's or this week's stories that are sort of the most intriguing. And yesterday, Jane, you didn't get to read this, but Rather and I got to sort of break this down. And since we're kind of on the topic of Utah and weird, strange energy spikes, yesterday, John Greenwald wrote a piece on his website, The Black Vault. And it's titled "Pentagon Releases Details About Dr. Travis Taylor's UAP Task Force Involvement." And it's straight from Susan Goff. It's an email exchange between John Greenwald and Susan Goff. And my first thought on this, Rather, and I'm wondering if you at any point thought this, it's funny how quickly the Pentagon, we'll just say, straightens things out, if that's what we want to call this. I don't know how you sort of took it, but I was like, why haven't they done this with Lou Elizondo?
Well, yeah. Lou Elizondo's story is much more complicated, right? Like the OSIP, ATIP stuff. Even if you get all the facts right, it's still confusing. And I can still see why they would give confusing answers. The main question I have for this, with Susan Goff confirming Travis Taylor, is why didn't we know this before? Why didn't Susan Goff tell us who the scientists were beforehand? Is there some expectation of privacy that Travis waived by kind of announcing it himself? And if that's so, why didn't he tell people earlier? He says that he was under NDA, but doesn't seem like there'd be a non-disclosure agreement in place for just the position of chief scientist at the UAPTF. I understand why he couldn't share any data or anything like that, but just that he was the person in charge, I'm surprised that was secret for so long, and I'm curious as to why they went public now.
Yeah, and my next thing was, it seemed to me a little bit like she was trying to downplay his importance within the task force. Is that fair?
A little bit, right? She called him the informal chief scientist, and it was not a full-time position, apparently.
It almost sounded like it was self-appointed.
Well, I mean, I think that it's clear that he's working with Jay Stratton, who was the head of the UAPTF.
I mean, the way she made it sounded almost like, oh, this is an extracurricular activity of theirs, and this is what, and it's official. They're there. We know about it. But I mean, I wonder if they have any. Would they have any say in sort of who gets hired for that task force, who writes what? Or, I mean, they're just essentially the public affairs office. Susan Goff, she's just the public spokesperson to what they do. She doesn't necessarily, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody out there, but I don't think she has jurisdiction as far as what they're allowed to do, what they're supposed to study, or who's part of the team, etc.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure she doesn't. My kind of reading of that is, there probably wasn't a giant budget for the UAPTF, so he probably couldn't have been hired as full time. So I that's kind of what I was getting at. I didn't think that she was trying to necessarily say it was an extracurricular activity or anything like that. I think that Travis Taylor was the main science influence on that report and on that task force.
Do you guys think he showed up to UAPTF meetings just like a little late, like maybe did some drinking the night before?
Oh man, no, that's pure speculation. Pure speculation.
I'm just saying, I've the Alien Con days and the reputation Dr. Taylor has, but I mean, I think he's great, and I think this is a really fun turn of events. For me, it doesn't feel dark and shady and Men in Blacky, but it's also just reminds me that, or just it always should remind us that we're all human, and even really smart scientists can get swept away, in my opinion, by theories like portals and stuff like that. And I'm sure that's probably what this team was supposed to do. You need to have people with an imagination, posing theories like portals and buried spaceships, or else you're never going to conduct the experiments to find any of it out. But yeah, I don't know. I like him, but I think it brings how I say that I'm becoming increasingly skeptical, especially when we're watching Skinwalker Ranch, and I've been really thinking about the parallels with them talking about the Tic Tac UFO, and then you've got the Pentagon videos, and now that you have Travis Taylor being an official vessel, I guess, of disclosure, that kind of stuff, jumping the shark, like you said in the stream last night, it matters more. It's different than a ghost hunting show or finding Bigfoot right now, right? If we had a whole UAPTF, or we had a whole, the Bigfoot town halls in the Finding Bigfoot show where all the citizens come and they talk about it. If that's what we were doing right now, with taxpayer money, we'd probably look at those shows differently and those people differently right now. So there's also, and then the last thing I'll say about, because I didn't read the article from John Greenwald, but Susan's perspective is probably, I'm just thinking there's probably an Ancient Aliens effect with him, that they maybe didn't want to they didn't want to necessarily associate with him.
Well, I'll read
these years maybe, but I don't know. Yeah,
I'll read the question from. This is his last question in the email to her from John Greenwald. He says, Dr. Taylor is a known television personality on shows like Ancient Aliens, Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, and many others, where there are concerns by the Navy that his frequenting of shows like the aforementioned would be a possible conflict of interest of any kind, potentially create ethical issues, create concerns about his security clearance, talking about UFO-related issues on TV, or affect his work with the UAPTF. Susan answered, as stated, Dr. Taylor was an employee of the U.S. Army Space and Missile Defense Command. His parent organization, SMDC, provided him to assist the UAPTF based on his education and experience as a scientist and engineer. In early 2001, following consultations with the UAPTF, SMDC took steps to clarify and deconflict assigned tasks, responsibilities, and outside activities to balance mission priorities. Immediately following the receipt of the above statement, the Black Vault attempted to follow up on the statement early 2021. Following consultations with the UAPTF SMDC, took steps to clarify. He wanted a follow-up on that, and Goff was asked to clarify what she meant by "I am a bit unclear what you mean here. Clarify and deconflict in what regard, and what changed thereafter," was the follow-up email. The answer was the following: broadly speaking, it means clarifying and deconflicting his assigned tasks and responsibilities between SMDC, support to the UAPTF, and his outside activities. I can't provide further details as we do not comment on individual personal matters.
Yeah, I feel like there must be still more to the story there, right? Like we know that Jay Stratton and Travis Taylor are no longer with the UAPTF, now
right.
the AOI MSG. And I wonder if Travis Taylor's, public persona was part of that.
It also could just be something as simple as that was the first report written and the office hadn't been created. And they're like, okay, we need something quick because we have a deadline. Let's grab this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, and this guy. And we'll do this first report, and then once that's in, then we'll get our own team, our own system in place to start doing these things, writing ODNI reports and reporting to Congress and making sure information is going to the right places and received from the right places. So could be something as simple as that.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, I mean, I just wanted to talk about it because it's something that happened last night, literally right after our show.
It's hard because we already talked about Skinwalker Ranch, so I feel like it keeps circling back. So it really does. It'll just turn into a Skinwalker Ranch review again. I think.
Yeah. No, it very easily could. So before we do that, I guess let's get into the next thing we wanted to talk about, which is Jeremy Corbell has been on sort of a media tour talking about the pyramids that swarmed the USS Kidd and a whole naval fleet, essentially. And he's also, there was an article written by a friend of the show, Christopher Sharp, for the Daily Mail, and it was co-written with Josh Boswell, and they wrote an article titled "Exclusive. Their presence alone is a serious national security issue. Dozens of sailors confirm their warships were swarmed by at least 100 otherworldly UFOs, as their accounts contradict Navy chiefs' effort to dismiss them as drones." So this article was kind of, I guess, received with mixed reviews. Some people obviously loved it. Some people thought it was like, hey, this is an article with just one source, which is Jeremy Corbell. And I think there might be two sources, and I'm curious to know if Chris Sharp or the Daily Mail or Josh Boswell might want to comment on this. Let me share the screen here with you guys so you can see the article that I am talking about. This is from the Daily Mail. And so there is a part in this article. There's a couple things in this article, but the thing that, just that makes me think there might be two different sources possibly is this line right here in the article. And it says, a crewman with direct knowledge of the case who spoke to dailymail.com on a condition of anonymity called the incident world-changing. So that tells me that either Christopher Sharp or, sorry, the other gentleman's name, I don't know him, Josh. Did I say Josh? Josh Boswell. I would think have one of these sources, because Jeremy Corbell, I don't know how many sources he says that haven't come forward yet, but he hints to it's more than 2 or 3 people that are telling him under the condition of anonymity that these were not just drones, that these were in fact, like the title of this article says, otherworldly vehicles. So this is something that we've talked about before, that we felt like this has sort of been in our view, I mean, we can't say with 100% definitiveness, but it seems like these were an effect of a camera effect called bokeh. And it's been repeated online. Many people have sort of recreated this exact thing, including the flashing of the lights and the shape of the craft. So I guess you guys read the article. I wanted to get your viewpoints, your points of view. We'll start with you, Jane. What did you think of sort of this version of what's happening with this drone swarm story?
Well, I'm a little ashamed of myself that I haven't spent more time learning and digesting all the information about advanced military craft and drones. It's come up a lot, over the years of reporting. Like I've learned things as I've gone along, but I feel like, as we're getting into these debates of is it theirs or is it ours, I have to be more knowledgeable about what our craft is. And I think, wow, I know so little. How little does the average Joe or Jane know as well about what's possible? Because even now, even just the known advanced drones are so crazy. Like they can go thousands of feet high. They can go, as fast as a jet or faster. And that's just the known. So
Right.
Those are just the knowns, right? So I feel like it's just our stuff is getting so advanced, it's polluting the sky. It's what's SpaceX, what's a missile over Norway, what's ET. It's really hard right now, and I don't have any easy answers here, really.
Right.
I really don't.
I mean, that was my biggest disappointment of the article, is that they cite a senior staffer at a U.S. defense contractor who's an expert in military technology. And this person is saying that the best quadcopter batteries only last an hour and have a range of 7 miles, which is, I did a very, very quick Google search, and that's, very, very much wrong. There's this article saying that, 7 drones with super long, flying technology. There's a hybrid drone that goes for 4 hours and 10 minutes, a diesel powered drone that has been aloft for 5 days and 44 minutes, a solar powered drone that stayed aloft for 25 days and flying for a whole year. They're talking about wireless charging with a laser. You can charge these wirelessly and keep them up indefinitely. So,
which tells me if that's available commercially, or if they're at least talking about it commercially, that means that the military's probably developed and used these technologies well before they ever became commercially available.
Well, these are talking about military drones, but still, that's what we know about the military drones.
Well, there are commercial drones that have 6-hour flight times. They are available. You can even put radar systems on. We've talked about them on the show. We've talked to Jeremy McGowan about his knowledge of drone systems and how some of these are hybrid drones where they're not only gas powered, like you said, they're also electrically powered. And some of them even use the aerodynamics of the drone to stay aloft without using either one, depending on the height of the drone, what the winds are up there. These things can stay aloft on their own without exerting little to no power.
So how do we reconcile that with the quote in the article? Is this defense contractor literally just ignorant of all this stuff that I can find in a 5-minute Google search? Or is he intentionally trying to mislead Christopher Sharp and the Daily Mail and all of us by extension?
Right. Well, it's, again, this is like this theme keeps coming up of just like, this is insanely confusing. Like you've got really great journalists like a Dave Beatty, a John Greenwald, and no matter how you feel about him, Stephen Greenstreet, doing great work, pointing out, really breaking down this drone swarm story very, very well, and showing you the logs and the pictures of these. They're clearly drones. But also, here's the thing that kind of boggles my mind is right at the beginning of this article, they throw in a video of the Snoopy team catching these things, and it's right here. Did you hear that when I played it?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we'll play this right now. Now, excuse the audio; it's a little windy in the clip, but you can clearly hear the member of this Snoopy's team say it's a drone and that it's too far away to get the taillight numbers or the tail number of the craft. So let's check this out. It's a 49-second clip.
This is Snoopy team leader on board USS Russell in position 3217 north, 11957 west, operating in SoCal hop area. The course 270, true speeds 59, at time 0424 Zulu. We have visual of 4 probable unidentified drones.
We have a visual of 4 probable unidentified drones. First thing out of his mouth.
With course unknown and speed unknown. Contacts are operating at a range of 1,000 yards and holding.
They're operating at a range of 1,000 yards. So that's 3,000 feet. That's less than a mile, right? Well, how long is a mile? Like 3,200 feet or something like that?
I can do the
500,
I can't remember.
280 feet.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's less than a mile. It's about a mile. We'll just call it a mile. Let's call it a mile. Okay.
Tail numbers are unknown.
Tail numbers are unknown. So that's the clip. That's the clip they put in the article to convince us that these are otherworldly, or show that the objects were actually there. I'm not really sure the purpose of the clip, because to me it doesn't really do the story justice at all. Like our standard here should be, where are the 5 observables? Where are the 5 observables that you guys keep telling us about? Because we're not seeing them.
Well, and I'll one-up you a little bit. We have to keep revisiting the 5 observables as well, because we're probably, like, when you look at what the 5 observables are, because I have to remind myself sometimes too. It's like I forget. It's anti-gravity. I have it up here right now for people to remember. Anti-gravity lift, sudden instantaneous acceleration, hypersonic velocities without signatures. I mean, we're working on faster and faster craft. In Top Gun, they were talking about going to Mach 10, and they were saying, by the way, that the enemies are like, or it was an unknown, it was a vague enemy, but that the point in Top Gun was you were only as good as like your pilot, implying everybody else is doing this too. So that, that's just like a mainstream Hollywood movie. Transmedium travel, low observing or cloaking. I mean, I'm sure we have craft where we're working on all 5 of these observables, right? So what is really alien anymore when we're getting this fancy and we're thinking about colonizing Mars? Like, it's, again, I don't think there's easy answers here. I actually think back in the day when we weren't, when Elon Musk wasn't sending payloads up there and all this, it was a lot easier to say something was otherworldly.
What do you think, Riley?
Yeah, 100%. It's a lot of, like, you see some videos of high performance drones, and they look like they do instantaneous acceleration, right? They zip around, they go to 0 to 100 miles per hour in practically a blink of the eye. It's pretty crazy.
And they also make damn near close to 90-degree turns, some of those high performance drones. Now the question is, can you get those high performance drones to fly for 24 hours? That's do they have that kind of power capability developed yet? And I would imagine the answer to that question is yes. If I had to go to a roulette table in UFO Vegas, I would bet on yes.
Yeah, you got to imagine they have some crazy toys hidden away, right? And going back to this story, the first thing that they told us was that they were, unaerodynamic shapes that were flying above them, the pyramids. And, it sounded like they had eyewitnesses who saw them, with their eyes and saw these pyramids. That hasn't come out. So, it seems pretty convincing that the whole triangle, tetrahedron shape was caused by bokeh. And now in this article, they don't no longer are claiming that anyone saw an unaerodynamic shape. They're saying is that they think it's otherworldly for the ability to stay powered for so long. And there was a case where it seemed to instantaneously accelerate upwards into the atmosphere, and then they went into the sea, which, I mean, yeah, we talked about the instantaneous acceleration. I could see a high performance drone doing that. We talked about drones being able to be powered for, days, weeks even. And then going into the sea isn't that big of a deal, right? Like anything can drop into the sea. It's coming out of the sea or being useful after you go into the sea is what would really be an interesting thing. So yeah, I think calling these otherworldly is a huge stretch.
Yeah, I can't get on this being otherworldly. First of all, I mean, look, and we could be wrong on this. Maybe I'm assuming that these other witnesses are still employed by the Navy, which means they're not going to come out and publicly talk. Maybe when they retire, who knows when that will be. But that's the issue here, right? And that's why we're kind of trying to step back here and look at the overall work that's being done by Jeremy Corbell and kind of like why is he? It's just weird. Like, why are we pushing this as otherworldly when there's so much here that points to terrestrial?
And I know Jeremy Corbell is quoted, I think he said on Twitter something to the effect of, I don't care if it's drones or whatever, we just need to figure out where they're coming from, who launched them, and what they're doing, which I totally agree with. But he also kind of be implying that they're otherworldly, right?
Yeah, the quote is, I don't care if these were drones or true UFOs, pyramids, triangles, or even seagulls with lights strapped to their wings. I want the fundamental question to be answered. Do we know the controllers of these units? And I think that's the most important question here. But the issue is that you're not leading the conversation with that. And it doesn't seem especially by the title and by sort of the suggestive nature of what these undisclosed witnesses are saying, we're not focused on, hey, who are these? Who do these belong to? Like, that's an important question. That's a question that a senator should ask. And I'm shocked that didn't come out in the hearing. Like, nobody asked that question. Okay, so if they're drones, who do they belong to? And what the hell are they doing there?
Well, and what's wild is you can't even suggest anything but aliens without a certain segment of people online accusing you of calling witnesses stupid or like, well, our stuff is more advanced than foreign enemies. It couldn't be China, it couldn't be Russia or whatever. And so the only thing is to conclude that it's extraterrestrial. Every other theory is just so bogus. And that is like such a turn of such a flip of how the conversation used to be, which it was one-sided and that wasn't good either. But we've lost the balance in the conversation, I feel like. So yeah, again, I think this is only going to get kind of more frustrating as more videos come out. And I think it's going to be actually especially frustrating when it's not as clear, when you don't have the camera operator saying drone, and when there is an observable, like maybe we do see something go hypersonic without a signature, right? And we all agree on that. Does that mean that it's extraterrestrial? And if we've all agreed to that then what? That I don't know that we all want to sign up for those leaps, right? So I think there's a lot of preparation that's happening right now with these other, I would say maybe even lesser videos where we're all just kind of figuring out, what do we require for disclosure, I guess,
I think the part that frustrates me the most is that we're told, hey, I've talked to people. I know people behind the scenes. I've been shown things like when we, and I gave homework to the co-host today of reading a very long Rolling Stone article about Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp and TTSA and this whole, Storm Area 51 event and sort of what went down there like the experience of this journalist who followed this story around in his conclusion. Man, I felt kind of vulnerable reading that, because I'm like, oh my goodness, like, is this us? Like, and I think
I was there.
you would know. Yeah, you were there. I know you were there. Yeah, no, I know you were there, and
yeah, so I felt the same way.
we're gonna get to it. And but my whole thing is like, I like Jeremy Corbell. Jeremy Corbell has helped this show. He helped us get the first Big Phone Home off the ground. I think, especially after reading this article, hanging out with Jeremy Corbell would be an absolute blast. I am one of the few people who's actually seen his was it his wife or girlfriend? But the Yeti, as he calls her, because no one ever gets to see her. But in my conversations with him, he's been super cool. He's been really helpful. We haven't spoken in a while, even though I've reached out to him. And I think it's because I've been a little critical of some of the things that he's been saying and doing. And this is like this. I get an awkward feeling in my stomach when I talk about people that I like and they're doing stuff like this that I think hurts the conversation. I don't want to say that about Jeremy Corbell, but I'm so tired of them making us feel stupid because we don't have the backdoor access that they do. And because we're questioning the things that they put out to the nth degree, they get frustrated because they know the information. They've been privy to some of this information, and they're trying to tell us that. But we're like, hey, we haven't seen that information. We need more. And we do. And I'm tired of being told that the scientific proof is out there. No, it's not. It's not out there. It's not good enough yet. And that should be the standard for the community. We need more than what we've been given so far. And to me, after looking at everything, I have to question now everything that's put out by this camp. Like, and it's something I should have been doing anyway in the first place. But like, this is to me, like, they're digging in their heels on this, and it doesn't look good. And it sure as hell doesn't feel good even talking about it. Like, it doesn't feel good talking about this, but it's like, damn it, man. Like, we need more from you. You're like the leader here. You're like the guy, who's talking to the media, who's making the films, who's got the budget, and the financial freedom to pursue these things. Like, I feel like there's a better effort to be had there. And you don't need to hype us up, and you don't need to lie to us and I don't even know if it's even lying, more as just like not being able to step back and just take your emotion out of this, take your belief system out of this, and step back and look at this story and say to yourself, okay, I think these witnesses that could be young, who knows how young, they could be kids that are still learning these systems, still learning the equipment. And maybe they made a mistake thinking they actually saw something otherworldly, as the title of this article says. But I can't trust these sources because first of all, we don't know who they are. And the only person who's saying that these sources are solid is Jeremy Corbell. At least in this article, I have a feeling George Knapp would also validate what Jeremy's saying, but they're almost like a team. It's like, okay, well, who else though? Who else is validating this stuff? Because that video that I just played does not validate any aspect of otherworldly or even 100 drones. Like, why do I feel like I'm taking crazy pills here? Like, why do I feel like I'm going to get yelled at and people are going to hate me, or I may never get Jeremy Corbell to come talk to me ever again because I really don't like what they're doing here. It feels like they're digging in their heels and they're like, this is otherworldly. Prove it. Prove it's not. prove it's not. And the real question is, who do these belong to? Like, that's what I really want to know. But they're definitely otherworldly. There was 100 of them there. They were pyramid shaped. You know, like all of these things, like, why can't they just be, hey, we made a mistake. They're terrestrial. But the important, like, even like, to me, discovering a foreign drone adversarial fleet above our naval ships is still a huge story for the UFO community to bring to the public. Like, that's a huge story. There's adversarial drones recording our systems.
It could very well be world changing, right? If other adversarial people got drones and are able to, you know, figure out our defenses and, you know, mitigate our defenses and topple our military, that could change the world.
Thank you for bringing that up, because that also stuck out to me. This world changing thing. If this is adversarial drones, that's world changing. For the first time in American history since the British invaded the United States, this is the first time that the United States has a clear weakness in its security apparatus. Like, right above our naval ships, 100 miles off coast of our shores. Like, that's huge. And I don't understand why Jeremy isn't really emphasizing that aspect of it, because to me it shows, hey, you might think we're idiots, but we're really useful idiots, because look at what we just found. China or whoever is spying on us 100 miles offshore with these advanced drones that stay in the sky for up to 24 hours. That's a huge story. Oh, and by the way, they may even be otherworldly, because I got a couple witnesses who say they've saw some pretty crazy maneuvers out of a couple of them. Haven't confirmed or whatever. We still need more data on that aspect of it. But the big story here is, you know, there's a drone problem. And the Navy and the Air Force are not equipped to handle it. Especially if there was, let's just say this is true. There was 100 of them. 100 drones. Where did they come from? Who's piloting them? Why were they there? How did we deal with it? Did we have anything that could deal with them?
Yeah. What did they accomplish?
What did they accomplish? Right. What did we learn? Why is Congress not asking these questions? Why is Jeremy Corbell and George not asking these questions? Like, this should be at the forefront of this wonderful journalism. Like, and that's something that Stephen Greenstreet's not asking. Like, I feel like he's just so focused on catching a lie, and we're missing a much bigger story here. It's staring us right in the face.
It's actually,
Go ahead.
I posted which I knew it was man-made at the time, but I posted a mass UFO sighting in Texas because my brain had the really weird bias of going to like missiles and war and like rockets, and I didn't even like. I mean, I did consider SpaceX, but I really was comparing it to other things, and I posted it because I just thought that was like a really big story. And so I think that's like that. I think that's the direction we're going to go in. And I think, okay, think about though, like you're in charge of national security, right? And you've got all these craft in the sky. Some are yours, some aren't. What is it kind of helpful to have aliens in your back pocket for some of these sightings, right? I think it's a helpful thing to have because it's in some way you can control that more. In some ways, it's like we don't necessarily want to know Americans to know that maybe Russians had a jet fly over this one particular country, right? So there's that to keep in mind. I want people to keep in mind what would be the national security agenda behind any of these leaks and any of these disclosure efforts, because I start there and then I go from there. And I think that'd be
May I just stop you real quick? Yeah. I think the national security agenda would be tell people it's UFOs.
Yeah,
Yeah. Tell people
because
it's UFOs.
It's safer kind of in a way. It's, oh, that's fun. I can talk about that at a campfire. Like that's actually, it's kind of the opposite of the world of the worlds when you have actual wars between mankind happening, right? Or maybe they're friendly. They're not, they're just kind of showing up and hovering, right? So it's definitely a narrative that's being constructive, you know, however constructed, however you want to take that. And then as far as Jeremy Corbell goes, I would say he can't or won't ask questions like that, because in my opinion, that's not his brand. And Jeremy Corbell has been Jeremy Corbell since the very beginning of this. You know, he believes Bob Lazar. He believes there are other worldly visitors, and that, you know, our government's been tracking that. And I think he's going to keep saying that story and keep banging that drum for as long as he has platforms. And I think Elizondo will keep banging the drum of, you know, I was a former, you know, employee, and I want to bring the truth out. And I think these are their brands, and it's intentional, and they've been consistent, and I wouldn't expect any, I don't more or less from them. And I don't even mean that in a negative way. I mean, I think I even have a brand, and I think I'm not making any money. So my brand
here's
I know what's going on.
Here's the thing though, is 6 hours ago he tweeted, "Hey UFO Twitter, false and lazy reporting tried to climb its way up the media chain like a virus. Nope, not today." And then he's got a clip of him pushing this story, this swarm, as otherworldly things, and the idea of the question that he brings up in the article of, I don't care if these were drones. Yeah, you do, because if they're drones, it kills this narrative of them being UFOs. If they're not pyramids, flying pyramids, it kills the narrative of these UFOs. Absolutely, I think he does care. So, you know, but the core of this question, the fundamental question to be answered is, do we know who's controlling these things? That is what he should be telling. If he was talking about that, I would have no issues with any of this. But it seems like this story is just like exactly what you explained. It feels like a magician. Look at this hand right here. While with the other hand, you're doing something else. And the other hand is scrambling to get this drone issue under control. They really, really are. They really are. I'm 100% convinced of that right now. We've got a major drone problem, and nobody is talking about this except for The Drive, Dave Beatty, John Greenwald, and a handful of other people. This is an issue, and I think not in all cases, let's be clear here, not in all cases, but I think in the footage that we've seen, none of it has shown any otherworldly physics or maneuvers or any of the things that have been linked to non-human intelligence. So,
yeah, I think that's what we need, right?
It almost feels like we got to go backwards on the disclosure clock after this story, you know, because here's the problem that also pisses me off, that grinds my gears, is my mom sent me this video going, "Wow, did you see? They're flying pyramids." And this was the day it came out, and Mick West had already debunked it, you know, like 2 hours after it was released. And I'm like, "Mom, I would just calm down. There's still more information needs to come out on that." But the fact that CNN, ABC, Fox News, they all ran with it as if it was pyramids flying in the sky, instead of doing just a little bit of research. I mean, look at the research and the mapping that Dave Beatty has done with this story. It's been incredible. It really has. And for Jeremy to just come in and be like, "Nah, none of that. It doesn't count. Doesn't count. Only I have the sources. Only I have the truth."
But we have to keep, there has to be somebody to keep that going. That debate has to keep going, in my opinion. You know, all that back and forth on Twitter, all that conversation, it's clickbait. It's the brand. It's where there has to keep being that conversation and that back and forth of, oh, it's UFO or it isn't. And I'm not really, I guess I'm suggesting, yes, there's a design to this and there's a conspiracy behind this and all that, but I really don't even think you have to invoke that. I think people just fall into their positions, like me included, and there's just this big puzzle piece, and we all see where we all need to go. And right now that does have to happen. And I would say from a national security perspective, no, you really don't want investigative filmmaker journalists going around and talking about drones and craft that exceed what we can do here. And I think it's interesting, the Top Gun movie coming out, and it's all about how we have the fastest jets, right, in the world, or that we're trying to get to Mach.
Yeah, but I mean, but the thing with that, right, and when I was watching Top Gun in the movie theater and I saw that scene, I was like, oh, they're going Mach 10, and then the plane tries to do a turn, and it literally takes an entire country for it to turn. You know what I mean? Like, it's still very much thrust and lift.
But that's kind of what I mean. Like, that's why you don't want, I don't think it's good PR right now. We have so much out there. Other people have stuff out there. There's private, corporations that probably have stuff out there, right? And so I would just think from a national security perspective, I'm that person in the control room. I just want to see, everything and know everything. And I want all the citizens reports, and I want to hear what people are talking about. And I want to see, what does the public think about these drones that we're seeing over a ship, so I just think in the background that's what's happening. And I don't think in the background the agenda is necessarily for all of us, the three of us in the live chat, to be able to figure out what these are. Doesn't mean we can't figure it out though.
Yeah, and I wonder if there is a little bit of a conspiracy aspect going on. That Rolling Stones article from August of 2020, which I believe was before this pyramid story broke. I'm not sure on that, but I think it was. Jeremy Corbell has a very interesting quote. He says, either a bombshell that will change the way we think about UFO topic, or I'm being played. And this is talking about something upcoming that he's going to release. Or I'm being played by very serious people, and it's a big effing fraud, and they want me to repeat it publicly. It's my challenge to figure out which.
Yeah. And so I think it's these videos, right?
Yeah. And it seems like they are kind of being played. And I can see how you could be being played, right? If you're talking to a military official that is of high rank and is privy to stuff, and they're telling you privately.
Well, he's not saying it's really one person. He's saying it's multiple witnesses. Multiple witnesses came to Jeremy Corbell. And that's, I don't know, man.
I don't think witnesses are lying, though. Do you? I don't have the perspective that these events didn't happen, or that witnesses aren't seeing things. I completely believe Gary Voorhees and Alex Dietrich and all of those people. It's just, what are they seeing? Is it actually otherworldly? I guess is still.
Well, yeah, and if you're just a Navy officer on that ship, your normal day to day is just doing your military exercises, and then you see these crazy drones going around you. That's going to be very exciting, and you might think it's something out of this world. It's my impression that there is some senior military people who kind of hooked Jeremy up with these crewmen who are saying this stuff. And then you look at this recent Christopher Sharp article, and it's citing anonymous DoD contractors who are saying things that are patently false. It kind of makes it seem like there's some sort of effort by the military to play these off as UFOs.
To deceive and not disclose?
Yeah.
Well, but here's the boldest thing of all of it, is he's calling the U.S. Navy liars. They testified under oath that these were drones. So he's calling the U.S. Navy liars. That's bold. It's bold.
Yes. Yeah, so is Travis Taylor. I think he's kind of recounted. Right. And now Travis Taylor has recently said that he thinks that they probably are drones and stars. But he initially said that what they said at that congressional hearing was false, which is a huge claim. Yeah, I agree.
There's just something's not right. Something's not right here. Just something's not right here. Well, okay, just a couple real quick, and then we're going to get into weird texts. But I didn't mean to cut you off, Jane, but I wanted to get to some of these comments here real quick. One from Curious George. We could prove this easily. Go there Thursday, rent a boat, bring binocs, and take a good look. They say it was an exercise. It was Zoom on Thursday, then check flight and plane again circle. I think he's talking about the flares. We haven't gotten to the flares yet. But yeah, I've got a poll. Let's see how the poll's doing. So the poll says, what was over San Diego? Drones, flares, genuine UFOs, or seagulls strapped to flares? And right now, flares is winning with 34%, 31% in second place, saying it's genuine UFOs. And in third place is seagulls strapped to flares, and in fourth place is drones. So we'll get to that conversation in the whole are drones the new swamp gas in the second hour. But just a couple of quotes. And here's the thing too, is like, I do like Rolling Stone magazine. Like, I feel like their journalists they take a lot more liberties than, say, a journalist from the New York Times. Like, this journalist essentially ends this article, spoiler alert, with taking mushrooms at Jeremy Corbell's desert home, and it was a really funny, snarky, kind of condescending at times article about the community. And he's really kind of like, I don't think he believes any of it. Like, after his experience, meeting Corbell in the desert, meeting Knapp, and then going and meeting with TTSA and the things they were saying, and sort of fact checking them as he's going along the way. And I mean, one of the things that I noticed that he wrote in this is when he met Corbell at the festival that you were at, Jane. He said, Corbell isn't hard to find. He was sequestered in an RV the size of a Manhattan condo just behind the stage.
I was there at the time that we met the journalist. I was there for all of this.
Yeah.
Even the phone conversations and everything.
Wow, you were in the RV when all this went down?
Yeah, I was in the RV when I think the journalist came in and said, hi.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, it was a little aloof.
The journalist was?
Yeah, I didn't pick up the believing vibes. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay. What else did you notice about him since you were there?
I mean, he didn't talk to me at all. Let's just say that. Like, everybody else was like really friendly. Dave Foley was awesome. George Knapp was awesome. Jeremy was awesome. Though, like, I didn't get invited to do shrooms. I'm a little hurt by that.
Well,
I think he was a journalist. I think he was observing. I think he was taking notes for sure. Yeah.
Well, to be fair, the shrooms I don't think happened at the bus or the RV. I think it happened at his house. It was a completely different state. So don't be offended that you weren't invited. But like, I mean, like hearing that, like those are the parts of me where I'm like, dude, Corbell's cool. Like, I know he was cool.
Yeah, it was so fun.
It was fun to hang out with. He's incredibly personable, and that's what this article really says about Jeremy, is that he's a lightning rod. Like he's you can't not take your eyes off of him, kind of thing, like that's the vibe I got about Jeremy. But
smart
that he was
capable.
Very I don't know.
But in person, he was executing that event and was working the whole time and was adapting. So I got to see a lot of behind the scenes, him handling different journalists on the phone, the event logistics, and just kind of see him and also taking care of the community at the same time, which I thought was neat, like watching out for, everybody that was there. So very conscientious. And so that was just my little sliver. And then I'll just say, and then you can go back into it, Lou. It's funny that Jeremy was like, am I being played? Because it's like this domino effect where I'm like, okay, well, the whole time I'm thinking, am I being played by Jeremy? I mean, from the very moment of being invited out to Area 51, I'm thinking that way, the whole and ever since. And so it's just so funny that we're all just thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, who's playing me?
There was one other thing. There was a few things I pulled aside, but we're running out of time, so I'll go to this one. When he talks about TTSA, And the journalist wrote, TTSA has been hit hard on other credibility fronts as well. DeLong announced earlier that this year the TTSA had purchased 6 pieces of metal whose atomic composition seemed not of this earth in the New York Times. They had been melodramatically described as unknown aluminum alloys being stored in a Vegas warehouse. The cost was a mere $35,000, which is the first sign not to take TTSA's breathless announcement too seriously. It was purchased from Linda Moulton Howe, a longtime UFO journalist / gadfly. I had to look up the definition of gadfly because I was like, what is a gadfly? And so a gadfly is an annoying person, especially one who provokes others into action by criticism, which I was like,
there's
many
gadflies on UFO Twitter.
No, that's for sure. But I mean, the first thing I thought of was that Kurt Jaimungo interview. The provenance of the metal is straight out of an X-Files spec script. It was sent to conspiracy radio host Art Bell decades ago by the grandson of a man who claimed to have recovered it from a crashed alien craft outside White Sands, New Mexico. So, and of course, we're talking about the Crotty Agreement and the whole purchase of these metals that we never, ever got a resolution to. I don't think anybody even knows where the metals are right now. Like, that's how buried this story has become. And so it's funny to look back on this and go, oh, yeah, he nailed that. Like, that Crotty Agreement, yeah, we shouldn't have taken it too seriously. He absolutely was right. It ended up going nowhere. So anyway, there's Jordan Mack with $5 donation says, here's a fun theory. What if the bokeh effect is happening on the pyramid UFO? Everybody wins.
I love that to be true. I wanted it to be flying pyramids. I mean, how awesome
I do
would that
too. Be? Like, look, man, here's the thing is, and I hope people don't get confused with us trying to be debunkers or trying to be haters on this stuff. Like, we're not. We're demanding better. I think is at the core of this. We want better data to go to Congress with, to go to our friends with, to go, for us as well, like for the people of this community. Like, we want that validating video or picture or file or testimony. Like, we want that, and we want more David Fravors. We want more Alex Dietrichs. And I think that's the thing that he really caught. I think that's the one thing that the journalists caught on to was David Fravor and his grandfather being a Navy pilot, and how well these guys are trained, and how not in the interests of a pilot to come out and start talking like this. They're not doing themselves any favors. And if there's one part of this story that I felt like he was like, oh, that's incredibly interesting, it was the David Fravor aspect of it. So we need 15, 20, 30 more David Fravors to come out to really get the attention of lawmakers and the American public. We need more than just 1-2 people. We need more than 3 people. I mean, we've got Graves as well. We need more, and we've got to somehow figure out a way to clear the runway for these people to come out and tell their stories without getting fired or getting demoted or any of that, stigma sort of stuff that sticks with this topic. But I mean, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I think the military is actually kind of the wrong place for this information to come out. There's kind of the assumption that these UFOs are interested in our military and our, nuclear ships and all that. But I mean, it seems like just on the face of it, other militaries are going to be more interested in, all powerful alien race, right?
Right.
I think that aliens probably are here, right? If you think about von Neumann machines and self-replicating robots. But I don't think the military is how we're going to find it. I think that things like Galileo Project and other civilian projects are.
The debrief, I'm sorry to cut you off. The debrief put out an amazing article about microscopic objects within low atmosphere, and how if there was an alien race, what would be the best way to sort of monitor Earth. I think they said there was something around 5,600 satellites that orbit Earth, and then there's over 1 million different small reflective objects that also are considered dangerous objects that could slam into satellite. Like, they need to be tracked and monitored, and that these objects could be tiny monitoring systems, and there's ways to be able to detect if those things have any intelligence. especially if they're making lines in the sky, and they're reflecting. Like, there was a lot of cool stuff brought up in that article. I was like, oh yeah, that's a wonderful point.
Yeah, like we don't hear about nanobots that much anymore.
Nanobots,
those are very interesting technology. And think of if you wanted to actually send something to another solar system, it's going to take a lot of energy to go there. It's going to take a lot less if it's just a microscopic robot that you're sending.
Right. Like throw a couple nanobots on an asteroid and then just chuck it toward Earth, and a couple of them break off before it impact, and then the other ones. I mean, Jeremy Corbell did a cool little movie about possible nanobots within this droplets of water. I remember paying for that movie. I think it was like $15, and it was only like 7 or 8 minutes or 12 minutes long. And I'm like, what the hell is this? I was so confused. I'm like, where's the rest of the movie?
I'd pay for that.
Yeah, no, I was very confused. I thought there was going to be more to the movie, but no, it's like a short film. And I was like, what the hell? I was not gonna lie, I was a little upset. Lee with a £5 note. Thank you so much for the donation. Says we also have to think about deepfake technology being applied to UFO videos. Pretty soon it will be indistinguishable from reality if it isn't already. I agree with that statement. What do you guys think?
I mean, I totally agree with that. It's just like with our own craft and drones, confusing things. Like, it just gets harder and harder. I want to, like, to your question earlier, though, I'd say there's two aspects to disclosure. One question is, what does the government know that we don't know? And it's going to be hard for it to disclose anything that it knows in real time right now, because that's going to be of national security concern. I know people get mad at me when I talk about like the files in the history and Roswell and all that, but I want that. I want those files. I want to know the actual history of the cover-up. That's number one. That has nothing to do with whether aliens are real or not. And I don't think we can ever get like to that second question probably without that first one being answered. And there were pyramid UFOs, Cash Landrum incident. I bet they have photos. I bet they have video, or did. Where is all this stuff? Where are, we could have so many more answers by now about this. And then, the second question is, are aliens visiting and getting to the bottom of that? I really increasingly am separating that out from the politics and the Travis Taylors and the Lou Elizondos and Jeremy Corbells, because it is very much like magician in a hat, very distracting. UFOs are being seen all the time right now. So I really am focusing on what people are sending me and what I'm seeing on MUFON. And like right now, that feels a little bit rawer to me and less confusing.
Someone said that the Cash Landrum was a diamond shape.
True, it was the top was cut off though, so it wasn't a full diamond. It was like an upside down triangle.
Grant Levox says, right on, Jane.
Yeah.
And Robert Vargas says, can I get a shout out? Shout out, Robert Vargas. Thank you for being here. All right, Jane, are you ready to premiere Weird Texas? Since we're talking about Texas. All right, you guys. So we have a new segment that we're premiering today. This is Jane's segment. Me and Rather are going to get out of here and clear the runway for Jane to do her brand new segment, Weird Texas. So here we go.
Have you ever been taken by the hand in the middle of the night only to look up and see Tom DeLonge shooting free throws in an empty gym wearing only a sock and yelling, "You got this, Tommy boy"? Then the sock falls off only to reveal a brand new shiny piece of Element 115. That's what it's like to live in Weird Texas. Join UFO Jane as she takes us into UFOs, ghosts, cryptids, and all sorts of weird stuff. Welcome to Weird Texas.
You're muted, Jane.
Thought I unmuted myself. That's a great start. All right, guys. So, and now my Google's going off. 1 second. Okay. Let's start over. There was a time in the 50s and early 60s when people sat out in their yards to escape the heat. And if you looked up, you could see all kinds of strange lights in the sky.
That's a quote from an anonymous witness, we'll call him Greg, sent to me in 2019. Greg was almost 7 at the time, playing in the backyard on an almost humid spring day in 1954 in Waco, Texas, a small enough town where you'd almost expect to see a tumbleweed, when he saw a UFO. Well, actually, multiple UFOs. Greg looked up and observed over 30 flying saucers flying in a V-shaped formation. It was not the first time that me and the other kids in the neighborhood saw these UFOs. It was very common, especially late at night, to see them streaking across the night sky, Greg wrote. And he's right. This isn't the first time somebody in Texas witnessed a flying saucer, nor would it be the last. Just a few months before this sighting, but in the very same town, there was an even more incredible encounter of flying saucers flying in a V-shaped formation, according to a MUFON report. I was in advanced flying school at James Connolly Air Force Base in Waco, Texas, in the last 2 weeks of my training to become a jet fighter pilot. It was a clear, bright blue sky, and we had just come down from flying T-33 jet trainers with our instructors. It was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and we had just landed. I looked down the ramp to my left and saw many people out on the ramp looking up in the sky. I turned around and looked up into the northeast of the clear blue sky and saw 3 V formations of glowing white flying saucers. There were 33 altogether. My instructor and another ran into the flight shack and called wing headquarters for permission to take a T-33 to fly up to them. The tower told them that they were watching them and had done a triangulation with the theodolite. You guys can look that word up, and had determined that the saucers were at 100,000 feet and were 100 feet in diameter. I had wanted to run back to my cadet housing to get my camera to take a picture of them, and we cadets were not allowed to leave the flight line except in formation. I thought there would be pictures in the paper the next day, but there were none. However, the tower had to keep a detailed record of the saucers, which was an Air Force regulation. There were thousands of people in Waco that saw them, so somewhere, there has to be a record of the incident. Now, could this witness be lying or maybe just misidentifying something, or both these witnesses, spring 1954 in Waco? But one thing is for sure, one fact checks out. There was a tower set up to keep record of the flying saucers. The same year of these encounters, I found a Waco Herald Tribune article with this news piece in it. The Air Force is now trying to snap a picture of the elusive flying saucers, which it claims don't exist. Special diffraction grading cameras have been installed at 60 control towers and 15 air defense sites. These cameras are designed not only to photograph flying saucers, if any come whizzing by, but also to reveal their chemical composition. Now, back to Greg. He wrote to me that he was never afraid, this is the first witness, because the flying saucers did not seem to pose a threat. Now that he's older, he thinks he and his friends were observing the goings-on at James Connolly Air Force Base. Well, I wonder what Greg would think of this fellow witness who reported to MUFON and was training at the James Connolly Air Force Base. Well, they saw something very similar. And, back to today, to 2022, people are still seeing strange discs in the sky, though the Tic Tac UFO is the most talked about, headline-worthy shape these days. But for those who lived in Texas in the 40s and 50s, the flying saucers are sticking around, if only in their memory. There we go. There's the first Weird Texas, and maybe we can get some music and sound effects and
woohoo! That was awesome. Yeah, that was great. Nice job, Jane. That's always funny, man. I feel like we don't see as many where you don't hear about triangles or saucers much anymore. It's Tic Tacs now. That's
what people call them, Tic Tacs, whereas they didn't used to.
Right. Well, they used to probably call them propane tanks, right? Because Tic Tacs didn't even exist in the 50s.
Right. But people were seeing, I would get, videos of cigar-shaped craft and things. That's what they would say, cigar or rod, or a disc. And then, Commander Fravor comes out, and now people regularly use that term. So
Yeah, well, Baby Goat says Jane killed it.
Oh, thanks.
J. Allen Heineken. Wow, that was weird AF. Weird Texas, yes.
Trying to include Texas, trying to include weird, hopefully.
Yeah, nice, Jane. Well, it could be whatever you think. I mean, look, it's paranormal. It's going to be weird, right?
It could be anything, right? It could be ghosts.
Epic. Smog says Texas is weird. So you nailed it. You absolutely nailed it. Good job. I love it. Well, okay, so did you have any thoughts on that case there that Jane laid
I think it was super interesting. It's great when you can get, kind of corroborative evidence, two people who are seeing the same thing from different perspectives. And these are the kind of perspectives that you'd want, right? A civilian on the ground and a person in the sky, 100,000 feet. That's up in space pretty much, right? Like, right. And I'm curious if, back in the 50s and 60s, would they usually think of, now we have Starlink, which is kind of a formation of satellites, but I'm not familiar with, a V formation of satellites that would be there in the 50s and 60s. It does seem very, very weird.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. It was a much cleaner night sky back then. I wonder how much more polluted our sky. Like, we're double in population on planet Earth as far as human beings. I wonder how much how have we like quadrupled the amount of objects in space, since we've been sending stuff up there.
Good point too. Like, what do you think the hours of sky observation are now versus back then? Now that we have, so much more population. But yeah, like you're saying, back then they'd go out to the yard to beat the heat. Everyone's inside with AC looking at their phones these days.
Yeah. But not only that, cigarettes. I can't remember who brought that up on our show a while back, but people don't smoke as much anymore. People would go outside on their porch and light up a cigarette. And a whole bunch of people quit because they learned how terrible tobacco companies are and what they put in their cigarettes. But it's a nasty habit. But yeah, people don't smoke out in their yards anymore. People don't go out in their yards to cool off from the summer heat because there's no draft coming through the house and there's no such thing as central air yet. But yeah, nice work, Jane. I love it. Very good.
Yeah, that was very, very
that
cool.
was weird Texas. Weird. So we'll get those at least once a month, you guys.
Yeah, it's a big state. There's a lot going on.
There's a lot. So oh my goodness.
We'll never run out.
We'll never run out of weird Texas. Okay, so I wanted to touch real quick because over the weekend there was a really big UFO sighting in this last week, and it was in San Diego, and it was lighting up UFO Twitter and even mainstream news. A couple of news stations within San Diego picked up on this story. There were lights that were showing up over Mission Bay in San Diego, and when I first heard that, I was like, oh, well, Mission Bay, there's a huge military base there. There's always planes. First thing in my brain was like, it's probably flares, just because they're probably doing a military exercise of some kind. But there was a huge debate, of course, online as far as what these were. And there was some really great work done. Alejandro Rojas broke it down pretty nicely. He lives in San Diego. He was able to see the objects, even looked at them through binoculars, and then also was able to track the planes that were there in that area. And then the military also came out and said, yeah, we were doing training exercises. These are our flares. And the thing that I love, they're flares, okay? There's nothing extraordinary or fun or exciting about that, right? But the beautiful thing about this story is if something like this does happen, man, people were ready for it. And they knew exactly where to share it. There were multiple angles of it. So it does go to show that, hey, people are still looking up. People still do pay attention, especially if something is out of the norm. Right? Like, and that's what was super encouraging to me about this is that there was enough organization to, as a community, be like, hey, this event's going on. What do we need to know? Who's got the boots on the ground? What video? Where are they coming from? And people were able to piece this really nicely together. And I think it goes to show that if another Phoenix Lights type event happens in a major city, we're going to get it this time. It's not going to go unnoticed, and it's not going to go, it's not going to be reliant upon a VHS camcorder that's the size of, you know, a small cooler, and, you know, with the resolution of VHS. Like, we're even cell phones, I think a cell phone had enough resolution for us to figure out exactly what this was. And the beautiful thing is, and I think this is really the best video out there of it, and I'll share the Twitter account that shared this video. I'll bring it up for you guys. So this guy set up his iPhone and did a time lapse, and you could see I'm sorry, I wish I could zoom in on it a little more. Oh wait, sorry. By the way, this was put out by Jadit on Twitter. But right here, if you can see my cursor, the three lights, like there are 3 or 4 lights that come, and it's a time lapse, and they're released and they drift downwards, just like flares. Somebody also got a great close-up picture of these things, clearly showing their flares. But that time lapse for me does it, right?
Yeah.
Like, again, like there's no, if we had a time lapse where things were zooming, well, I mean, it would depend on this time lapse, but if it was a video of these things doing incredible maneuvers, doing the 5 observables, dipping into the ocean, shooting up into space, then this would be an amazing event, right? Then it would be a lot more difficult to comprehend and sort of explain away. But I was I guess kind of proud of UFO Twitter over the week. And I was like, oh, we figured this out. We figured it out really quickly. But the thing that was encouraging is that, hey, people are, when they see stuff in the sky that's weird, that they can't explain, they will whip out their cell phone and try and film it, you know, and clearly people did that. And so, you know, I found it insanely encouraging. But I'm curious, like, what did you guys think?
I mean, I thought I was really intrigued at first, I think just like everybody, and I was like ready to do the investigating and try to figure out what it was. And then sure enough, just like you said, UFO Twitter had already taken it apart. And then, I don't know, I mean, to me, flares adds up. I've seen a lot of videos of flares over the years. They can look really spooky. They can be stationary, kind of seemingly, seem stationary, right? But I mean, I don't know. Is there some non-flare theory that?
Well, I mean, half of our
haven't
audience
entertained,
believes,
like, that I'm missing.
So, I mean, so 32% of the audience believes it's genuine UFOs. You know, 34% believe it's
hovering
flares
for so long.
I think
why?
that's definitely part of it. Yeah, I mean, you know, again, if you're looking at this in a real-time video, they look like they're stationary, but as I just showed you on the time lapse, they're definitely not.
But then
they're not stationary.
Then you see that one disappeared, and
yeah. But they also disappear. Like the time lapse shows, they disappear all at the same time, essentially. You know, in sequential order. If anything, the time lapse shows. You know, so I mean, I just don't understand how, with all, including. You've got the flight records. If I could find them here in UFO Twitter, but you've got the flight records of these things in online. You know, like you can find them. I don't think that's a different flight track record, but somebody had posted it. I'll see if I can find it here for you guys. But I mean, yeah, is this it? Yeah, here we go. Flight radar. Let's see what this gentleman put up. Flight radar showing military flight in the area past 2 hours. Lights seem to have stopped with its return. Coincidence or cause?
Well, to somebody who's saying it's a UFO, though, they would just say, "Oh, a military plane was just interested in the UFO," though, right? So.
Yeah,
I mean,
wasn't there an actual? Just wasn't there an actual, like, didn't somebody claim the flares, though? Didn't that actually come out? Not just that there was a military plane in the area? Or
yeah, no, the military claimed it was flares.
Right. So
I think when the flares, and they were testing them out, you know, as training, because they had to get rid of them.
The skeptics are just saying it's a cover up. You know,
I mean, the local
Phoenix
news.
Flights. Okay, I hear you guys. I hear you.
The local news reached out and and got clarification on that. So I mean, if we're still at a point where we're going, again, digging our heels in and saying that these are real, genuine UFOs, I mean, the data doesn't point to that.
It doesn't look like they're flying. It
Yeah,
doesn't look like they're flying. They don't look
no.
like craft to me. They just flat out don't look like craft. They look like lights that were still and then gradually disappeared. And there were different formations, but you never saw it. Like the triangle videos are cool because like you'll see it rotating, right? Or Phoenix lights. It was a big black mass, that traveled literally over people's heads. So that's why I'm not seeing any of observables in this, but hey, I'm open. You guys, I believe the cover-up's real. So I also believe if there was like a new Phoenix Lights incident, we could very well see the military come out and say, oh yeah, it was flares, or see them drop flares the same night like they did in the Phoenix Lights incident. But I have to see another video, guys, or another testimony.
Yeah, it really doesn't move the needle for me. It doesn't show any of the 5 observables. And we already talked about even the 5 observables don't necessarily mean that it's aliens, but you need to see a little bit more than just lights in the sky. That being said, I think that it is a valuable thing to surface because we can feed these to, AI programs that are trying to identify what is prosaic, what might not be. I really wish that someone had like a FLIR camera that was able to get a picture of that with FLIR, so we can just kind of, broaden our knowledge of what unusual airborne objects look like under different optical conditions. There's this one really cool video of 3 objects. People think that they're parachute flares. It kind of points to that in Afghanistan. And it's kind of a grainy FLIR footage. And it actually shows a missile go through them. And it doesn't seem to affect the flares at all.
I remember this video. Yeah.
I still think that video is very, very interesting, but it could be flares. But, if you were able to capture another footage of, known flares that are doing something similar, that'd be, the nail in the coffin for that video. So I think that even if they are prosaic things, if they're unusual things that occur in the sky, film it, post it to the internet. It's interesting, and it helps.
I think that's exactly what happened. People filmed it and they posted it to the internet, and we were able to figure it out pretty quickly. Aaron Tyson says, Lou, search YouTube for lights over San Diego. These events happen all the time over the same area. Oh no, I've seen those videos. San Diego has got a lot of wild stuff, but the thing that I will always go back to with sightings in San Diego is just the amount. My brother lives in San Diego. I'm down there all the time. Michelle's family's from San Diego. The amount of military planes and testing and training exercises that they do there. I think a lot of these things that we as just normal citizens maybe don't have the perspective of some of these things that they're playing with out there. And I think some of these things could be explained by simple military activities, but I definitely know these videos, Aaron, and I agree. Like, I think probably one of the most interesting set of photos ever taken of a UFO happened in San Diego. I think have you guys seen this? I forget what they call it, but it looks like a UFO, almost looks like Sputnik floating in the sky, and there's even video of it. And it's got like these little legs that come out of it, and it's like a solid silver dome, metallic dome. It's really cool footage. And I think that's some of the best civilian footage that I've seen has come out of San Diego. So appreciate the tip.
Is that right by Catalina Island? Is that off the coast of San Diego, or is that different part of California?
It's off the coast of San Diego for a naval ship, like or a jet. Like, it's especially a jet. It's like probably a 5 or 10 minute flight, something like that. But no, Catalina's more. It's definitely between Los Angeles and San Diego, but it's closer to Los Angeles. They launch boats out of Long Beach to get people out there, so it's closer to LA than it is San Diego. But that whole from Catalina all the way south, past the border, they run training exercises there all the time and they also, it's a highly active zone for military and Coast Guard because of all the drug runners and submarines and boats and immigrants trying to get smuggled into the United States. All sorts of crazy stuff happens in those waters.
Yeah, I mean, you could see there's probably, if there are foreign adversaries who are trying to scope out what we're doing, that seems like the perfect place to try to observe us too, right? So
absolutely,
could be a lot of interesting stuff going out there. They could all be prosaic.
Yep. And also, like, there's two things. I just going back to this Jeremy Corbell thing, because this is something that, and somebody brought this up. So let me bring up the comment that reminded me of this. And that was this comment right here. This one. Kevin Peeler says, can we shoot these things? Jeremy Corbell is claiming that we've shot at these objects. And that's like, have you guys noticed this as well? The interviews that he's been doing saying that we've shot at these objects.
Yeah, and I saw someone post on Twitter a log that they said supported that they shot at the object, but the log didn't really make sense to me and didn't seem to support that. Maybe it did. I am not very well in my military acronyms and stuff.
I have a very difficult time believing they're shooting live round ammunition in American waters at objects that they don't know all the information about. Right. I mean, let's say for a moment it is extraterrestrial and you're unloading weapons, but let's say you miss and those bullets travel and hit a fishing boat, like or a cargo ship that's coming in, or upon a sailboat with family fishing. Like, dude, nothing that any other journalist has reported has ever come close to saying that we've shot at these things. There have been the only instance I could think of is the Iranian incident in the 70s, where the Iranian pilot tried to shoot at these things, and he said that all of his entire jet just basically shut off the second he tried to pull the trigger. That's the only instance that I've heard of officially of a military power shooting at these things. I'm sure I'm wrong. There's probably others, but that's the only one I could think off the top of my head.
Battle of Los Angeles. With that,
I guess that counts. Battle of Los Angeles.
Debate, what happened,
right?
But
right. I mean, that's definitely an interesting. Well,
it's a firefight, right?
Probably. The thing that interests me, right, is the idea that people died of heart attacks that night because they were so scared. They thought that we were being invaded by the Japanese, and that this was the start of World War III. Or World War II, excuse me. Like this was a big deal. I think that's a great example, Jane. That's a great example. But that was over 50 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. So since then, have we? And also, like, there was a tension of war in the air when that happened. So I can understand I can understand the rationale of opening fire with live ammunition because you think these are Japanese planes or blimps or whatever coming to attack Los Angeles, or at least that's your initial thought. So in that case, I can understand. And also in the 50s, like, I don't think there was as many cargo ships, as many boats out in the water. Like, it wasn't as populated as it is today. There's a lot of different elements, but yeah, I'd count that. That's a good example. What do you got, rather?
I mean, I think if any of us flew our DJ drones over an aircraft or a Navy ship, I would expect it to get blown to pieces. Like I don't like. I mean, I don't know what the regulations are and stuff, but yeah,
you think it'd be blown to pieces?
I think they should, right? In my opinion,
I think that's dangerous as hell to shoot down especially if you know what it is, like a DJI drone. If you know that's what it is, it's like, okay, some schmucks. I think you can get a naval warship can get the radio frequency ID of that drone and find out who that is registered to or who that drone was sold to. I know for sure they could do that and track down the person of that drone, and they'd be in a hell of a lot of trouble. I don't think shooting at a DJI drone is even in the top 5 reactions to to that situation.
I did remember another instance. So actually that Edinburgh, Texas case I was talking about from the 60s. So it was 8 construction workers, male construction workers, that witnessed this or had this encounter. And I don't think it was logged, but I think the idea, or it's speculated that they did shoot up at this object, because this would have been Texas 60s rural area, right, where you're doing construction. So probably somebody had a gun. And I think that's the story with that. So it's kind of there's one to add.
And I think I have read, can't remember the specific source, but they said that they did try to use electronic countermeasures on these drones and were unsuccessful.
Unsuccessful, yeah.
Which is, interesting of themselves. But that kind of does beg the question, if these are adversary drones that are swarming our ships and our normal electronic countermeasures don't work, what is the appropriate response? Maybe they have little bombs on them. It does seem like you'd want to keep them away at all times.
A little bomb, I don't think is gonna sink a naval ship. I think if a little bomb drops, I think yes, then you'll see these things open fire on them. But I don't think opening fire first is even on the list of options of things to do. I think collecting counterintelligence, like I think when those drones show up over the naval ships, they go, that's interesting. Okay, point everything we have at it as far as measuring tools that we have.
Well, that's the theory, that they want them to do that because they want to. The theory is that they're provoking us to try to see what we do, right? To record those types of responses.
Right.
That is another thing that I've read, is that when they have these drones, instead of doing that, they kind of batter down all their radar and everything because they don't want their signals to be leaked and be detectable. So it is kind of a, damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Damned if you don't. There. Yeah. I can't imagine though, even if it's a drone of swarms, that they'd be able to have, unless of course they're just not ready for this adversary, right? This is a huge hole in their system. But I have a hard time believing that 100 drones have more capability of measuring and collecting data than an entire naval battle fleet.
Well, they're collecting data on each other, right? So, on a whole, I'm sure that the naval battle fleet can do more. But if these drones are specifically trying to pick up the radar emissions and signal emissions from it seems like they could potentially learn a lot from being in the vicinity.
Right. Was this California one you were talking about?
Yep, that's
Lou?
The one.
Yeah, I was just trying to figure out, ever since you brought it up and trying to bring it up. That was a MUFON case. Yeah. So it's one of those where I mean, yes, submit your reports to MUFON, but if it happened in Texas, also submit it to me so I can talk to you and get more information. Yeah, that was California 2014, somewhere in California.
The video.
There's a video
I'm
with
sure
that?
San Diego. There's a video of it. Yeah, it's a good one. It's like a good.
Why was the video long. Not with the?
It's funny. It's like this. I don't know if I've ever seen Mick give an explanation on this one. Maybe he did it with a balloon, possibly, but. Man, I don't know. I've never. I
want to see that video. I'll say I can't find that. I can't find that article on Google. I can only find it on DuckDuckGo. So I'm already really into the sighting, and I only thought there was a photo.
No, there's a video of it out there.
I want to see the video. Okay, that's a good.
Yeah, there's even Blue Shift is like there's a high def video of it. It's out there. Guy recorded. Yeah, it's a long. It's like he zoomed in and out on it. It moves behind trees. What? It's pretty wild. It's a great civilian sighting, and I'm not really sure why that one's not kind of propped up as like a really great video. But I'm curious. I'm wondering if Nick's ever seen it.
Those ones that kind of disappear to me are the most intriguing to me. The ones that kind of quietly fade out, but they're never debunked. They're never explained. We all just kind of forget about it. Those, I think those are the really good ones. So
Jason Brown. Go ahead, Riley.
Right. I mean, that's an interesting, conspiracy, right? If there are people pulling the strings and influencing Jeremy Corbell, are they pointing him towards prosaic UFOs to hide the real ones and kind of make the subject a little bit of a mockery. It seems plausible.
Yeah. Jason Brown says, Luis, the United States Air Force have shot passenger planes out of the sky. Why not UAP? When did they shoot passenger planes out of the sky? And
I know Russia has done that before.
Yeah.
I wonder if he's in conspiracy zone here or not, or if he's talking about any confirmed.
I know that was something that was put on the table when 9/11 was going down, and they were trying to figure out where these planes were going, and the idea of shooting them down before they hit their targets. I think that was definitely discussed. Whether or not that happened, I've never heard of it. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what you're referring to there historically. But even still, like, this is, less than 100 miles off the shore. Like, I think if U.S. battleships open fire, I don't think they have the gun. Like, U.S. battleships have guns on their ships that are meant to hit big targets, not little drones out of the sky. I just don't think those guns are super effective against this problem. I think there's gonna have to be countermeasures to this. Like, there's a drone fleet here. Okay, release our drone fleet and scramble them or take them out or whatever the solution is. Throw nets over their blades. I don't know. Whatever. I have a hard time believing that a naval captain is going to be like, yeah, open fire. I don't care how far away we are off there. I don't care what civilian I mean, because when you look at this, when this happened, there was a pleasure boat around the fleet. There was also a fishing boat, and there were cargo ships coming in and out of Long Beach. So there's civilians all over. Like, I have a really hard time believing a captain going, open fire, send everything you got.
Pirates of the Caribbean,
especially if the captain, if what we're suggesting in this scenario, let's just say they are otherworldly, non-human looking craft, firing bullets at them to me would be the last thing I would want to do. Because what if that started a war with them? Like, one captain gets to decide that we get into an intergalactic space war. I don't know. Seems irresponsible. But anyway, any closing thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, just watch Mars Attacks.
Right.
I think they need to work on a plan to address it one way or the other. If it's shooting them, or it seems like an untenable situation that they're currently in, where they're just letting them fly around with impunity. Yeah, I think whatever they do, they need to address it somehow.
I agree. I think we're getting to a point now where, at least for me, I'm getting to the point where it's like my standard is so much more difficult to reach today than it was 4 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago. Like, we as a community have to come together and say, okay, we've had enough of this. We've had enough of the muddying the waters. We've had enough of the stories that don't line up. We've had enough of the stories that legitimate journalists have a difficult time following. We've had enough of the digging in of the heels. We've had enough of the telling us that this is extraordinary, and then when we do the analysis, we find out that it might be extraordinary, but it's definitely
birds.
Yeah, or it might be, or it's or it is birds. Like, in some cases, it is birds. I'm like over. Like, I don't get excited anymore when Jeremy Corbell has a brand new drop. I'll look at it, of course. I will always check it out, but I'm not getting excited anymore. Like, and when these stories are coming out, I hope you guys, you don't have to be rude about it. Like, I'm not calling anybody a liar. I'm not calling for anybody's head to be put on a pike. Like, I'm just saying we need better information, and we need to hold these journalists to a higher standard. All of them. And when they come out with crazy stories, we need to question them. Including us, absolutely.
I love it when you guys like, I love my favorite fans, quote unquote, are the ones that regularly come and like pick at things, you know, stories I put out there or put up explanations for videos. I've only become smarter because of people like that, or, you know, better about analyzing videos. So yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you talk about, you know, reducing stigma, which I think we all agree that, you know, this issue shouldn't be so stigmatized. You know, there's kind of two sides to that. One side is, you know, don't, you know, accuse people who are saying that they see stuff of making stuff up and ridiculing them. But also you can't be ridiculing the skeptics and people who are trying to just get to the truth of the matter either. You know, you have to go where the evidence leads, or else it does become a little bit of something that serious people are going to mock. And I think that we should fight against that. Try to make this topic as serious as we can.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Rather, it's like we want everybody to be better in this discussion, and you getting frustrated with people like me, or calling, let's say, people, not me, journalists, lazy, as if they don't have the intelligence or the know-how to understand this story. Only you're the one who can explain this story the right way. When people start claiming those things, for me, and I recommend, if you're listening to this show, for you to also consider that a red flag. Not that a red flag means they're, you know, a leper or anything, but just, hey, just take that story with a grain of salt, wait for more information on it, wait for people to dissect and dig and try to get to the bottom of it, and then maybe come to a conclusion on it. And I think that's kind of what this drone was. Like, when we first got the reports of these pyramids, it was released with that object falling into the water. And remember the radar tracking, like we had Jazz on the show. Like, this was all very, very exciting when it first came out. But thankfully, we were very cognizant and aware, and we're like, hey, like, we need to, this is exciting, this is cool, this is fun, but we also need to just pump the brakes and make sure that this information is accurate. And here we are more than a year later, and we're finding out that, hey, these are not as extraordinary as they're being claimed to be. And in a lot of these cases, they've already been not debunked, but solved. And solved, to me, is a good thing. But again, just going back, I think we're missing the biggest story in this. And I don't know if that's on purpose, if that's designed for us to be missing this very big story, or we are just genuinely missing this very big story because we're so focused on the one tree that we're not seeing the whole forest. And I don't know what I lie. I am leaning toward which it is. And I think that it's a distraction. It's a magician's trick. It's something up the sleeve. Look at my hands here, while this other hand is doing something else, or my assistant is setting up this illusion. And I think that's what we're getting right now. And I think that's something that we should ask our lawmakers and hold them accountable, and start asking them for more clarity on this stuff, because we have that right. We're taxpayers. These are the things that we will be focusing on for Big Phone Home 3. Like, we have a right to get more clarity on this stuff. We're owed that. We really are. Like, we really, really are. But we have to ask for it. We can't just sit on our hands and complain about it. You have to do something. You have to get off your butt and actually do it. So, you know.
Yeah, I agree that closed door hearings where they're showing people secret evidence isn't really going to cut it anymore. You know, they need to show us the goods and tell us why they're reacting in the way they are reacting, and also, you know, tell us what they're doing about potential foreign adversary drones. You know, there's no talk about, you know, what a response to potential Chinese drones forming.
Well, because nobody's asking them. The questions are about UFOs and clarifying whether or not these things are extraterrestrial. Everybody's missing who the hell do these things belong to? Okay, so Navy, you just said under oath that these are drones. Great. Awesome. Thank you for the clarification. Follow-up question. Who the hell do they belong to? What are they doing there? Why are they there? And why
what are you doing about
it? And what are you doing about it? Why are you not talking about it? And is this UFO story a cover-up for your malfeasance and overlooking of this very real problem? My blood starts boiling when we start talking about this stuff because it just feels like we're getting duped a little bit here. It really does. And the part that sucks is that I still think that there is a genuine diamond in the rough aspect to this phenomenon. But I think either A, we stumbled on it could be a combination of all these things, but I think partly we've stumbled upon a huge hole in our Air Force and Navy security apparatus, and we also have very advanced, very high tech, very physics breaking looking like planes, craft, whatever. And then also there is this diamond in the rough aspect to these things. And I think in the last two, it might be difficult to differentiate US tech from something that could possibly be non-human. I really, really, really am starting to believe that the United States, especially the Department of Energy, I just saw a video the other day, and I want to play this for everybody next week, of a concept of a massive plane, like basically a cruise ship in the sky that's powered by nuclear energy, and how this concept is very, very real, and how this plane can stay in the sky forever. It doesn't need to refuel. It just needs supplies, food, things like that, and that is supplied by a jumbo jet that attaches to it like a fighter jet refueling. I mean, these technologies exist. We have these things that can provide unlimited energy for little to no cost. They're in our submarines, they're in our aircraft carriers. So we're gonna start exploring that stuff, because it's, hey, either we're gonna find aliens or we're gonna find really cool secret tech talking about this. And I think either one is a really killer story. But we're out of time, you guys. I want to say thank you to KGRADB. Want to say thank you to the moderators. I want to say thank you to the Patreon members, the YouTube members, the super chatters. You guys are amazing. Thank you for supporting the show with the almighty dollar. If you can't support the show with the dollar, don't sweat it. There is no paywall here. We're super proud of that. But if you could support, it helps tremendously. If not, like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. That way you don't miss any of our shows, any of our live streams. Want to remind you guys, this show will be available on iTunes, Spotify, shortly after the show. So go download the show. Guys, do you have anything before we get out of here?
Not for me.
No.
Yeah.
All right. Excellent. Well,
keep your
fun
eyes
week.
in the sky. You know.
Have a good 4th of July.
Eyes of this guy. We just stole Christina Gomez's closing line.
Oh shoot! Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hey, shout out Christina. You know,
shout out Christina. Well, you guys, thank you so much for coming aboard, getting weird with us here on another episode of the Unidentified Celebrity Review. Your home for credible news, reviews, commentary on everything UAP and UFO. Until next time, stay safe out there, y'all. Peace.
News 12 Sports with Pat Murphy.
Great news regarding Bills tight end Kevin Everett. He moved his arms and legs today. And doctors now believe that's the wrong video, by the way. That is not the right video.
I'm going to tell y'all right now, all of these wonderful people would not be here without Patreon supporters like you. If you enjoy credible news, reviews, and commentary on UFOs and UAPs 5 days a week, you want to support this show. What's your name? Marty. Marty, look how easy this is, Marty. Pick up your phone. Boom! You're a Patreon member. I mean, look, it's so easy. You just click the link, which is right here. Just for $1 a month, you can support this show. Just fill out the information and pledge what's comfortable for you. It could be $1, $5, $10, or who knows. Just support. Happy 4th of July, y'all. And pray for Kevin Durant to end up on the Miami Heat. That would be great. That'd be great if I came back next week and KD was on the Miami Heat. Anyway, enjoy the weekend.